The Czech-German political satirist Gabriel Laub once said, "Archaeologists dig up the history that politicians have buried." Today we will look at ancient cities and their secrets, why they were forgotten and who found them, what reasons buried entire civilizations in the sands of the Sahara and at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. Let's go to Pompeii. In Pompeii, where archaeological finds have remained surprisingly well preserved thanks to the ash, a more rare form of street art from Roman times was discovered. Graffiti drawn, not carved into stones. This type of graffiti, although more perishable, survived under layers of ash. And this is the Villa of Mysteries, a well-preserved ancient Roman house which probably belonged to a powerful family. Unlike most expensive houses of that era, the villa is located outside the boundaries of Pompeii, on the road leading to the city. Despite the fact that the house was covered in ash during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, it has remarkably well preserved. A large part of its walls and floors remained virtually untouched. Another important discovery was a temple, which was found in one of the previously unexplored parts of the city of Pompeii. Layers, the ashes that buried the city as a result of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, served as a unique protection against the effects of water, air, and solar erosion, which allowed the frescoes of the temple to be preserved in excellent condition. Also from the interesting forum terms. They represent some of the oldest baths in the city, and some of them are still in good condition. They occupy an area of more than 900 square meters and include two separate sections, one for men and one for women. 3. The first to uncover the ancient city was Heinrich Schliemann. Interestingly, the young German chose the path of archaeological searches with the Russian Empire. There he was offered to make a career because Russia was considered a very promising place for business. Representing a Dutch firm, Schliemann amassed a solid capital in a few years by selling goods from Europe and gained the support of the Russian Empire. His language skills, which emerged in early childhood, made Schliemann an ideal partner for Russian merchants. Having identified his sphere of interest, Schliemann set off for Greece, where he organized his first excavations on the island of Ithaca, but, having suffered a failure, he moved to the lands of the Ottoman Empire on the peninsula of Troy, which is in Asia Minor. Heinrich's excavations yielded many ancient artifacts, but the results were unsatisfactory. But in Schliemann's opinion, they had no relation to Troy, and therefore were not of interest to him and were often simply discarded. Such unprofessionalism and even vandalism undermined Schliemann's reputation. Until he found Priam's treasure in 1873, he considered nothing he had excavated to be of any value. Meanwhile, the hill of Hisarlik held within it 9 layers of successive archaeological cultures, the traces of which were recklessly destroyed. Having no relation to the sought-after Troy, in May of the same year Schliemann finally announced that he had discovered Troy, having excavated the ruins of Priam's palace. The treasure found with them contained more than 8,000 items and was secretly smuggled out of the Ottoman Empire. These findings became a sensation as Schliemann actively promoted his own activities. Not only he himself believed that what was found was indeed Troy, but also many of his contemporaries. The scientific community is ambivalent about the fruits of Schliemann's labors. He ruthlessly stripped Hisarlik, destroying or displacing many cultural layers. His bold claims about the provenance of the artifacts he found being from this or that era are often very controversial and even baseless. But Schliemann has his merits too. He became a popularizer of archaeology, contributed to its rapid development, invested a lot of resources in science and museum affairs. Machu Picchu. In 1911, American archaeologist Hiram Bingham discovered an Inca fortress in the Andes, which is now known as Machu Picchu and presumably served as one of the residences of the Inca rulers. To this day, historians argue about the time of the fortress's construction and the circumstances that led to its abandonment. Thanks to the fact that the Spanish conquistadors never reached Machu Picchu, the fortress remains a well-preserved example of Inca architecture. Experts admit that science cannot yet provide definitive answers to many questions related to the history of Machu Picchu. The study of the fortress continues to this day. In the 21st century, laser scanning specialists and ground radar users came to the aid of archaeologists. Scientists have discovered about 100 residential houses and approximately the same number of public and religious buildings in Machu Picchu. The settlement features all the characteristic types of buildings for Inca centers, temples, observatories for determining the day of the solstice, houses of knowledge, residences for chosen women of a special social group who participated in religious rituals and who were, according to a number of assumptions, the unofficial wives of the ruler. Scientists call the characteristic feature of Machu Picchu the abundant staircases and terraces intended for agriculture with an efficient water supply system, Knossos. According to the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, every 9 years, 7 girls and 7 boys were sent from Attica to the island of Crete. A certain death in the walls of the labyrinth awaited them in retribution for the death of the son of the Knossos king Minos, named Androgeos. All 14 people were sent as a sacrifice to the Minotaur, the Knossos monster with a human body and a bull's head. The Minotaur, who came into the world as a result of the love of King Minos' wife for a bull, was locked in the labyrinth for the heroes. Criminals were usually brought into the labyrinth to feed the beast. Cretan frescoes found on the island allowed scholars to conclude the existence of a special sacrificial ritual. It was called the Bull's Leap. The act was similar to a modern bullfight, but much more bloody. Knossos was discovered by the English archaeologist Arthur Evans in the year 1898. With the help of sponsors, Evans bought the hill of Knossos, under which, as he believed, the ruins of the ancient capital of Crete were hidden. Hiring 32 laborers, he began excavations here, and within a few hours they stumbled upon the first traces of a grandiose building, which Evans called the Palace of Minos. Hundreds of rooms, ceremonial staircases, storerooms, craft workshops, and a unique water supply system. Hard to believe, but the building, built 2,650 years before our era, had toilets with a sewage system. On the territory of the Cretan palace, scientists found a fresco depicting the aforementioned confrontation of Minotaur and Theseus. They also found an image of a labyrinth familiar to us. The unique structure represents a complex of many rooms and halls, perfectly fitting the description of the very same labyrinth. However, there are disagreements here. Some researchers agree with the opinion that the Knossos palace was built much later than the mythical labyrinth of Dwarka. For Hindus, Dwarka is considered a sacred city. This was the ancient home of Krishna, who, according to legend, lived on earth 5,000 years ago. Dwarka, according to legend, was created by divine architects at the request of Krishna himself, who demanded that the city be built from crystals, silver and emeralds. He also insisted that the city have 16,108 palaces, each for one of his 16,108 queens. In the end, the city was destroyed in a titanic battle between Krishna and King Salva, who obliterated it with energy blasts. All this sounds like a typical myth, but when archaeologists began to study the sea where Dwarka was supposed to be, they actually found the ruins of a city that matched the description. It didn't have 16,800 silver palaces, but it was a large ancient city with clear planning. There is reason to believe that the real Dwarka was possibly built 9,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest cities on Earth. In its time, it was one of the busiest seaports in the world. Then, in the 2nd millennium before Christ, it sank into the Sigiriya Sea. In Sri Lanka, in our era, King Kassapa built his palace on top of a rock 200 meters high. According to legends, it was one of the most incredible castles in the world. To enter, one had to climb a large staircase that passed through the mouth of a huge lion made of brick and plaster. But Kassapa did not live long in his castle. Soon after its construction, the brother of King Moggallana, the army of Kassapa, attacked it. Fearing for his life, Kassapa fled, and his wives jumped off the cliff, smashing themselves to death. Sigiriya was conquered and left as a monument to the self-loving king. Sometime later, the castle was converted into a Buddhist monastery, and soon it was forgotten. When European archaeologists began investigating this history, they discovered that the castle actually exists, as does the large lion guarding the staircase, through whose mouth one had to pass to get inside. The complex architectural task was facilitated by natural forms that had a certain resemblance to the aforementioned reclining animal. Hence the name Sinha means lion and Giri stone, just like Singapore. The Sanskrit name for Singapore means the City of Lions. Later, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization declared Sigiriya the eighth wonder of the world. Leptis Magna, a large Roman city in Libya that was once a major trading center of the empire, was completely buried as a result of the Guri sandstorm. The city is called Leptis Magna, and this was the place where the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus was born. He turned it into a gigantic city and one of the most important parts of his empire. The fact that in Rome they attached such importance to maintaining control over Leptis is evidenced by such a fact. After concluding peace with the Numidian king Jugurtha, the Romans returned all his former possessions to him, except for this city, which served as the gateway to the Sahara. But when Rome fell, Leptis Magna also fell along with the great empire. It was plundered by raiders, destroyed by Arab conquerors, left in ruins and completely forgotten, and eventually buried under shifting sands. Leptis Magna was under the sand dunes for about 1200 years, until archaeologists found it in the century. It turned out that the city was wonderfully preserved under the sand. Among the remains of ancient structures are a forum, an amphitheater, baths, temples and monuments. Particularly well known is the architectural ensemble known as the Market Forum, which was one of the most outstanding Roman architectural complexes of that time. Heracleion is mentioned in almost every Greek myth. It was the city from which Heracles first set off for Africa. It was the place where Paris and Helen hid from Menelaus before the Trojan War, and scholars had not the slightest idea where this city was located. As it turned out, there was a reason why no one could find one of the most important ports of Egypt. It had been underwater for about 2020 years. Heracleion likely suffered from an earthquake or tsunami after which it sank. Watermen swimming off the coast of Egypt bumped into it at the beginning of the 2000 years. The treasures of Heracleion are not so numerous and rich, but they have been beautifully preserved underwater. By studying these artifacts, one can get a very clear picture of the life of the Greeks and Egyptians at the time when it was a bustling port. Incredible values raised from the seabed include a 5-meter statue made of red granite. Researchers believe that this is the Egyptian pharaoh Ptolemy. Also brought ashore were identical statues of the goddess Isis and the god Hapi. In addition to the large finds, archaeologists have discovered hundreds of amulets, small figurines of gods, and sarcophagi with mummified animals brought as sacrifices to Osiris. Heracleion is one of the largest ancient shipyards ever discovered, with more than 60 ship hulls lined up as if in a parking lot. Among the wreckage, chests of gold, jewelry, gold coins, bronze and lead pigs, and ceramic objects were found. Also found in the port were beautifully preserved steles and columns with Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions. The stele recorded the ships that entered the port, as well as the taxes and duties they were required to pay. Thanks for watching and see you in future episodes on our channel.